The mission of Bethany Baptist Church is to make, mature, and multiply followers of Jesus Christ from all peoples and generations.
We're going to, again, invite all the youth to come and have a seat on the front two rows. We don't want to force you to do it, but just give you that invitation again to come. As we start our Lenten journey, we are focusing on the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And that's one of the main events in the Christian church, is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So for the next several Sundays, we're going to be focusing on the resurrection, the road to the resurrection, the road to that day that we celebrate Jesus Christ and him rising from the dead. And we're going to specifically be looking at Hebrews chapter 11, the faith chapter. So the title of our series is A Faith Journey to the Resurrection in Hebrews chapter 11. Now I have a question that I want to ask. We're going to be talking about faith. We're going to be talking about the road to the resurrection. What is the biblical definition of faith? In the Christian church, we hear a lot about faith. Young people hear a lot about faith. They say you got to have faith. You got to have faith in this. You got to have faith in that. But what is faith? What is the definition of faith? And in Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 11, we have the biblical definition of faith. Look at this biblical definition. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Let me read that again. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now, that's a good biblical term. But let me put it in terms that we can understand. Faith stands in the place of the thing hoped for and the thing not seen. So let me make it even more simpler. If you go to the next slide. And in the next slide, what we see here is what you are sitting in now. What? Oh, I need somebody to hear me. I need somebody to hear me this morning. What you are sitting in now. We stood out one cold, I believe, December morning, and we had shovels, and we stuck them in the ground. I believe it was, these guys, I tell you what, the camera people, when I move too far outside the camera, I can see them kind of getting, let me make sure I stay in. I believe it was somewhere over there by that wall that we gathered outside as a church. And we broke the ground by faith, believing that God had a building that he wanted us to build. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. When we stood there that day, all we had was faith. There was no building there. We just stood there by faith. Now, early on, we passed out a picture of the building, and we asked people to pray about it. Now, I'm going to tell you this. This might not be the most edifying thing to say on a Sunday morning, but I had this picture right here in my bathroom. I also had it on my kitchen refrigerator. So I realized that we didn't have the church. But every time I saw that, I never forgot that this is what we were hoping for. This picture right? This picture was the substance of things hoped for. This picture was the evidence of things not seen. That's faith, brother. That's faith. That's faith. When, go back to that slide before, that's faith. When you can stand on nothing. Woo! When you can stand on nothing and see it come to pass. That you guys are sitting in what we had faith in. And then it was sometimes later that I actually passed out another picture, and we had, oh, check this out, check this out, check this out, check this out. This is good, right? Right? You know, we had the finances to put up the shell. Right? Y'all remember that, right? We put the shell up. And all we had for about 2 years was a shell. And we weren't moving. You know, we needed to raise some more finances and get things going. Right? So I asked Deacon Boston to give us a rendition of what it would look like once it's finished on the inside. Now, this is not what we're sitting in now, but it's almost like it. And so we put the picture and we gave it to the saints to pray so that they could see what they were praying for. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things. That's all we had, was a vision, was a picture. And I know y'all getting tired of hearing me say this, but what you're sitting in today is the substance. What you're sitting in today is the evidence of things that we had faith in years ago. And actually, we started this campaign back in about 2010, 2011. And so it's been, all those years. And we finally got in here a couple years ago. But saints, and so what I'm trying to say is that sometimes in your life, you got to have faith, and you can't lose sight of what it is that you are working for. If it's a college degree, if it's writing a book, if it's getting that job that you want, if it's raising a family, you can't lose sight. You got to have something to take the place until you get the thing. And so that's what we're talking about for the next couple weeks. Faith. Faith is what we're talking about. And this morning, we're going to look at Abel. You remember Cain and Abel in the Bible. And so this morning, we're going to look at Abel's faith. And so we have a little introductory video that I want to show. And I'll come back and say a few things, and then we'll be done on this Youth Sunday.
The story of Cain and Abel begins right after Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden. Because they ate the fruit that God commanded them not to eat, sin entered the world and cursed God's perfect creation. Adam and Eve could no longer stay in the garden and now had to live in the world, which was a much harder place to live in. The ground produced thistles and thorns, which made it harder for them to farm for food. Pain, suffering, and death were now a part of life. It was after Adam and Eve left the garden that they had 2 baby boys. The oldest was named Cain, and the youngest was named Abel. When they grew up, Cain became a farmer and worked the ground, and Abel became a shepherd and took care of sheep. In the course of time, both Cain and Abel gave offerings to God. Since Cain was a farmer, he brought God some of the produce of the land. Except he didn't bring the best. He kept the best of his crops for himself, instead of giving it to God. Abel also presented offerings to God, except Abel brought the best that he had. He gave God the firstborn of his flocks and the best of his sheep. When God looked upon the 2 offerings, He was happy with Abel's offering because Abel trusted God and gave him the best. But God was not pleased with Cain's offering. Cain was furious that God was more pleased with Abel. The Lord saw how Cain was feeling and asked him.
What a story that we find in the early chapters of our Bible. That there were two brothers, and they made an offering to God. One made an offering of vegetables, and the other one made an offering of a lamb or a sheep or some type of animal. And God had respect for one offering, and the other offering he didn't respect. And as a result of Abel's offering, we fast forward to the New Testament, and Abel is mentioned in Hebrews 11. We call Hebrews 11 the Hall of Faith. And the people that got into Hebrews 11 got there because they did some great act of faith. And so it was Abel. You just saw the story. Cain and Abel. You know, going back to the early parts of the Bible. You saw the story and what they offered and what they brought to God. And God had respect for Abel's offering. And so we're going to look at Abel this morning. And I have four things I want to share with you. People started letting me know that, Pastor, you need to start passing out notes again. They say, we need to get the notes again. So starting this week with this series, we're going to reinstitute, before the pandemic, we pass out notes every Sunday. And once the pandemic hit, we stopped. So a lot of things are starting back slowly. So the passing out of the notes are being kicked back into gear. And so if you want to follow along on the screen, or you want to follow along on your notes, and I tried to leave some extra room. So if you want to write some stuff down, write some things that God might speak to your heart about, or maybe some side notes that you would have the opportunity to do that. But the first thing that we see is that Abel had obedient worship. Obedient worship. Look what it says in Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 4. By faith, Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain. Wow. Wow. He offered a more, here, two brothers. They both are coming to bring an offering. And the Bible says that Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain. Obedient worship. Obedient worship. What does that mean? It means three things. It means that his sacrifice was offered by faith. That he believed in God. He believed in what God said. You can't touch God. You can feel him moving, but you can't feel God, right? God is a spirit. And so the only thing that we have to help us is faith. When you think about how many senses do we have? 5, right? And when you think about your 5 senses, what do? They bring you in touch with the world around you. That you can see the things in the world around you. You can hear the things in the world around you. You can touch the things in the world around you. You can smell the things in the world around you. Your 5 senses, they bring you in touch with this world. It enables me to see this pulpit, to touch this pulpit. It enables me, if these flowers were giving off a scent, to be able to smell these flowers, right? That my senses help me to do that. But what helps me get in touch with God? It's that 6th sense. And everybody don't have it. You don't have that 6th sense unless you're a child of God. And the 6th sense is faith. Faith helps me to experience God in all his fullness. And so Abel had faith in God. And his sacrifice, it says, was excellent. That in the eyes of God, that Cain brought vegetables, Abel brought an animal sacrifice. And when God looked at both of them, he said that Abel's sacrifice was more excellent than Cain. It was far greater spiritually. It was far greater in value. And somebody had mentioned it earlier that Abel brought the best. And Cain maybe held back a little bit. But it's that third point that I believe is the most important, and that his sacrifice was in obedience to God's instruction. You see, I believe as we look at Genesis chapter 3 in verse 21, where God already required an animal sacrifice. Because when Adam and Eve sinned, what was the first thing that God did? He killed an animal. And he covered them with the skins. And I believe that Adam and Eve told their sons and said, the sacrifice that pleases God is an animal sacrifice. Now, that's my belief. Some theologians may disagree with that. Some people may disagree with that. But that's what I believe. And so I believe that the reason that God rejected Cain's offering is because he didn't bring an animal sacrifice. Well, you'll say, well, he could have took him to his brother Abel and said, you raise the sheep. Woo! Let me give you some of the best fruits and vegetables that I have. Let me give you the first fruits of what I have raised. Let me give them to you for a sheep so that I can offer an animal sacrifice and that God would be pleased. That God would be pleased. He had obedient worship. And so Abel's heart was right with God, but Cain's heart was not. Abel's heart was in bringing the best. Cain's was not. Now, I'm going to ask a question, and I don't want the young people to answer because I know how some of them might answer. Right? But the question I'm going to ask, all right, watch it now. Do you get bored when you come to church? All right, but hey, I tell you what, I'm a prophet. Didn't I tell you that was? I told you that was going to be the answer, right? All right. So I'm not going to talk so much to the maybe kids, even though I am talking to you. I'm going to talk to the adults. If you get bored when you come to church, have you ever thought about that that's an indication of your heart? Just go back to Cain and Abel. Why did God respect Abel's offering and reject Cain's offering? Because Cain's heart was not right with God. Abel's heart was right with God. And so when we think about the fact that maybe we come to church and we say that, man, I don't get anything out of coming to church. It's just a waste of time. Is that an indication of where your heart is at? I think of this lady that came to Jesus and she wanted Jesus to bless her. And Jesus said that, he had to take care of his people first and then he'd take care of others. And the lady said, even the dogs can eat the crumbs that fall from the table. And I'm saying that they saints, no matter how boring the speaker is, right? I mean, the speaker might be so boring that it's almost like sitting there and watching paint dry on the wall, right? That's how boring the speaker is. I mean, you say, I might as well be sitting here watching paint dry on the wall. That's how boring this guy is, right? And the fact of the matter is, if you come in your heart and you are looking for, somebody hear me now. Somebody hear me now. If you are looking for just a crumb, if you are looking for a crumb, you might not be looking for a loaf of bread. You might not be looking for a slice of bread. You might just be looking for a crumb. I guarantee you that God will give you a crumb if you come with that heart. So keep in mind, in your worship a lot of times is an indication of where your heart is at, of where your heart is at. He had obedient worship. I like this right here. He had an outstanding witness. He had an outstanding witness. Look what Hebrews 11:4 says. By which he obtained witness that he was righteous. That his witness, that people looked at him and saw that he was right with God. And when you look at your life, I'm not saying that you got to be a saint. I'm not saying that you got to be some holy roller. I'm just saying, do you basically do the things that are right? Do you make right choices? In school, do you make right choices? When you're at home by yourself, do you make right choices? It says that he obtained witness that he was righteous. Now let me share with you two things that are going to blow your mind, because it blew mine. Jesus Christ gave witness to the righteousness of Abel. In Matthew 23:35, Jesus called Abel righteous Abel. Man, when you got Jesus Christ giving a witness about you, you must be doing something right. And not only that, but the Apostle John in 1 John 3:12 gave witness to the righteousness of Abel. He called him righteous Abel. So here's a guy that appeared in the Old Testament just for a couple verses. And all of a sudden he got 3 references in the New Testament. Wow. I heard a story about a policeman. And he followed this car. And he put the sirens on. And the person was trying to figure out why the police was following them. And so they pulled over, and the police came up, and they said, "Officer, why are you following me?" He said, "Well, let me see your license and your registration." And he looked at it, and it all checked out. He said, "Oh, I was just checking it out." He said, "Because I thought this car was stolen." "Well, why did you think it was stolen?" "Well, because on the back of your bumper, it said, 'Honk if you love Jesus.' But I saw you when somebody pulled in front of you, you gave them the middle finger. So I thought the car was stolen." Are you giving indication of your righteousness? Who's giving witness to your righteousness? That policeman did not give witness to that person's righteousness, but actually gave witness to the fact that the person was doing something wrong. Let me move on to my third point. And my third point is this. Abel had an omnipotent word. Wow. This is powerful, man. This is powerful. Look what it says here. God testified of his gifts. God testified. Isn't it something when God, somebody might say, "Well, I want my pastor to testify about me," or "I want the deacon," or "I want my parents to testify." And it's all good when people can testify. But when you got God, saying a word for you, when God says, "Have you considered," and I'm just going to look at these guys sitting here on the front row, right? If you consider my man, my girl, right? Have you considered them? Man, they are living such a righteous life. Have you looked at their life? God put Job on Front Street. When the devil showed up, God said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Man, when you got God testify, and Abel was so righteous and he had so much faith that God testified about him. So, this is where your notes come in, right? This is where your notes come in handy, right? Abel had an obedient worship. Abel had an outstanding witness. Abel had an omnipotent word. And then finally we see Abel had ongoing worth. He had ongoing worth. It says, as we hit this last point, and by it, by faith, he being dead still speaks. The man is dead and gone. He's dead, but he's still speaking. What a powerful testimony. He had ongoing worth. Abel has ongoing worth because he continues to speak even though he's dead. Do you know that when you leave this life, that you are going to continue to speak? Notice the verses that I have up here, that you will speak. Your life will still speak when you leave here. Proverbs 10:17 says, the memory of the just is blessed. Wow. The memory. Those who have died and lived a good life and lived a righteous life and lived to try to help other people, that your memory will be blessed. That people will think about you and they will say, wow, that was a good person. That person, was an outstanding individual. But notice what it says here. Your life will speak something positive or your life will speak something negative. Because it says the name of the wicked shall rot. Shall rot. Your name is going to rot on this earth in negativity, in wrongdoing. And so we need to realize that we are building a name for ourselves while we're here. And it says that even though Abel is dead, he still speaks from the grave. And then I'm going to close with this quote by James Moffat. If you put it up there on the screen. It says here, death is never the last word in the life of a man or woman. When a man or woman leaves this world, be he righteous or unrighteous, he leaves something in the world. You can think, just think about the youth. When you leave your school, when you graduate from one school to the next school, from grade school to junior high, from junior high to high school, graduate from high school, you want to leave something behind, right? It's going to either be a righteous or unrighteous testimony, but you're going to leave something behind. He may leave something that will grow and spread like a cancer or a poison, or he may leave something like the fragrance of perfume or a blossom of beauty that permeates the atmosphere with blessing. You're going to leave something behind. Cain left a rotten name behind. Abel left a blessed name behind. And so as we look at our faith journey to the resurrection, Abel's faith speaks to us about how obedience in our worship, which is our adoration, our giving, and our serving, is pleasing to God and is a witness to others. So as we move towards the resurrection, think about obedient worship. That during these next couple weeks, Lord, I want to be obedient in my worship to you. Before Pastor TL comes and gives the gospel invitation, I've asked the choir if they would come and sing a song that is related to our message today. And the song is, we've come this far by faith. And so I'm going to ask that as we sing the song, that if you can, would you stand? If you can. If you can't, we understand that. But if you can, would you stand? And let us sing the song, We've Come This Far by Faith. Think about Abel. Abel has left a witness for us to follow. He has left a faith witness for us to follow.